Overwhelmed by the awe-inspiring weight of this moment, and shaken to his very core, Muhammad fled from the cave, heart racing, and rushed home to Khadija, seeking the warmth of her presence, a safe harbor in a suddenly unfamiliar world. Sensing the depth of his fear, Khadija embraced him, offering soothing words and firm reassurance. Determined to understand what happened, she took him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal, a respected Christian scholar who possessed deep knowledge of the scriptures. After listening intently, Waraka's eyes widened with recognition. He solemnly affirmed, "This is the same angel who came to Moses. You, Muhammad, have been chosen, just as the prophets before you were chosen." And thus it became clear, the being he encountered was indeed Gabriel, the bearer of divine revelation. The initial phase of prophethood, the early days of Muhammad's prophethood, were not filled with constant revelation, but with silence, a divine pause that left him in profound contemplation. This period, known as the Fatra, was marked by an aching sense of spiritual uncertainty. With no further messages from Gabriel, Muhammad feared he had been abandoned. But then revelation returned, clear, commanding, and powerful. God had not forsaken him. He had been chosen. Encouraged by Khadija and bolstered by the quiet faith of his closest companions, Muhammad began to share the message of Islam, not in public sermons, but in whispers and private conversations. The first converts, the first to embrace the new faith, were those who knew Muhammad best, those who had witnessed his kindness, his truthfulness, and his moral strength. Among them was Khadija, his devoted wife, who became the first believer in Islam. Next came Ali ibn Abi Talib, his young cousin, raised in Muhammad's household, and full of youthful courage and loyalty. Then Abu Bakr, his dearest friend, a man of dignity and influence in Meccan society, accepted Islam without hesitation and began quietly inviting others to the message. Others soon followed. Zayd ibn Harita, a freed slave and adopted son, and Uthman ibn Affan, a noble and wealthy merchant whose humility matched his status. Together, they formed the foundation of a nascent community, united not by blood or tribe, but by faith, the secrecy of the early DAWH. For the first 3 years, Muhammad's mission remained secret and cautious. The small band of believers would gather quietly, meeting in homes such as at Al-Arqam, where they would learn, reflect, and pray together, all while avoiding the gaze of Mecca's watchful elite. The Quranic revelations during this hidden phase focus on the core beliefs of Islam, the oneness of God taught it, the reality of the Day of Judgment, and the call to moral awakening. These teachings challenge the established order, threatening the polytheistic traditions that had long anchored Meccan society. Yet even as opposition brewed, the call to public preaching drew near. In the year 613 CE, Prophet Muhammad received a divine command to preach publicly. He began with his extended family, inviting them to a meal where he stood before them and openly declared his mission. "I am the messenger of God, calling you to worship the one true Lord, creator of the heavens and the earth." This bold announcement marked a defining moment, not only in his life, but in the history of Arabia. From that point on, his message would no longer be whispered in private homes, but proclaimed in the public sphere, setting him on a direct collision course with the power structures of Meccan society. The reaction was mixed. Some were moved by the clarity of monotheism, the promise of justice, and the emphasis on personal accountability before God. Others, especially the Quraysh leaders, saw a threat to their wealth, traditions, and influence. They understood that Islam's rejection of idol worship would undermine their control over the Kaaba, which housed numerous idols and attracted pilgrims from across Arabia. This religious tourism was a major source of income, and Muhammad's message jeopardized the very foundations of their economy and authority. As the number of followers grew, so too did the opposition. The Quraysh tried every tactic: mockery, slander, threats, and intimidation. But the harshest persecution was reserved for the weakest: slaves, the poor, and those without tribal protection. They were tortured mercilessly, pressured to renounce their beliefs. Among them was Bilal ibn Rabah, an Abyssinian slave whose master would drag him into the desert, lay him on the scorching sand, and place heavy stones on his chest. Yet Bilal held firm, repeating again and again, "Ahad, Ahad, one." His defiance became a powerful symbol of resistance and unshakable faith. Another early martyr was Sumaya bin Kayad, along with her husband Yasser and their son Ammar. She endured relentless torture, refusing to recant her belief in the one God. Sumayya was killed, becoming the first woman to give her life for Islam. Their bravery inspired others, strengthening resolve of the fledgling Muslim community in the face of brutal adversity. Amid these trials, Muhammad found vital support in his uncle, Abu Talib. Though not a Muslim himself, Abu Talib shielded his nephew from the worst of Quraysh aggression. His respected status offered a layer of protection that allowed Muhammad to continue his mission. However, this protection came at a steep price. Abu Talib and the entire Banu Hashim clan were subjected to a harsh social and economic boycott. Trade with them was banned, marriages forbidden, and supplies cut off. For 3 long years, the clan endured near starvation and isolation in the mountain passes near Mecca. Yet their resilience never wavered. Eventually, growing dissent within the Quraysh and the intervention of sympathetic individuals led to the lifting of the boycott. But trials continued. The year 619 CE came to be known as the Year of Sorrow. Within a short span of time, Muhammad lost 2 of his greatest supporters, his beloved wife Khadija, who had been his emotional rock and his first believer, and his uncle Abu Talib, who had protected him for decades. These personal tragedies left him vulnerable, both emotionally and politically. The Quraysh, sensing his isolation, intensified their persecution. Still, Muhammad's faith did not falter. Seeking new alliances, he journeyed to the nearby town of Taif, hoping its people would welcome his message. But instead of finding support, he was met with scorn and violence. The townspeople incited a mob that pelted him with stones, driving him out, wounded and humiliated. Despite the pain and rejection, Muhammad's resolve only deepened. These experiences, loss, suffering, and rejection, would not break him. They would become the fire that forged his unshakable commitment to his mission, to guide humanity to truth, justice, and the worship of the one God. The rejection at Taif was a painful and humiliating experience for Muhammad. Driven out by an angry mob, wounded in body and heart, he might have been expected to respond with anger, but instead, he turned to prayer, raising his hands not for vengeance, but for mercy. He pleaded not for the destruction of the people who had cast him out, but for their guidance. This prayer, offered through tears and pain, stands as a testament to Muhammad's extraordinary character, one defined by patience, compassion, and a profound sense of purpose. Soon after the sorrowful episode, Muhammad was granted a divine gift, one of the most awe-inspiring spiritual experiences in Islamic tradition, the Isra and Miraj. In a single miraculous night, he was carried from the sacred Kaaba in Mecca to the distant Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. This journey, known as the Isra, was only the beginning. From Jerusalem, Muhammad ascended through the heavens in the Miraj, where he encountered the spirits of earlier prophets, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others, each affirming the continuity of God's message. Finally, he stood in the presence of the Almighty, where he received the commandment of the 5 daily prayers, an act that would become the spiritual heartbeat of Muslim life. This divine encounter filled him with renewed conviction and strength, preparing him for the next crucial phase of his mission. As Islam continued to spread beyond the confines of Mecca, its message found new ears and open hearts. During the pilgrimage seasons of 620 and 621 CE, small groups of men from Yathrib, a city to the north, secretly met with Muhammad. Drawn by his teachings and moved by his sincerity, they embraced Islam. These meetings will become known as the first and second pledges of Aqaba. In them, the people of Yathrib pledged loyalty to the Prophet and promised to protect him should he come to their city. For the first time, Muhammad had a real alternative, a place of refuge and a base for a growing community. As persecution in Mecca became unbearable, Muhammad permitted his followers to migrate quietly, in small groups, to Yathrib. The migration, known as the Hijra, will become a turning point not only in Muhammad's life, but in the course of history. In 622 CE, Muhammad himself left Mecca, accompanied by his closest companion, Abu Bakr. Their journey was fraught with danger. Quraysh leaders had plotted his assassination, but they were foiled by divine protection and careful planning. When he finally reached Yathrib, the city's people welcomed him with open arms and joyful hearts. The town would forever be changed. Yathrib was renamed Madinat and Nabi, the city of the Prophet, Medina. The Hijra became the starting point of the Islamic calendar and the foundation of the first organized Muslim society. In Medina, Muhammad was not only a prophet, but a statesman, community leader, and judge. He established a constitution that guaranteed religious freedom, justice, and unity among the city's diverse tribes and faiths. The Muslim community, no longer persecuted and scattered, could now grow, organize, and live by the principles of Islam and peace. This marked the beginning of a new chapter, the Medinan period. But to understand the strength and resilience of this new society, one must look back to the roots, to the earliest believers who embraced Muhammad's message when it was least popular and most dangerous. In the very beginning, when the Prophet had just begun to share his message discreetly, the first to believe in him was his beloved wife, Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Her support during these early days was invaluable. As a successful and respected merchant, her belief in Muhammad's mission gave it immediate credibility. She stood beside him with unwavering loyalty, providing emotional reassurance and financial support when no one else would. Next was Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's young cousin. Just a boy of 10, Ali's decision to accept Islam showed the powerful emotional and spiritual pull of Muhammad's message, even to the youth. He would grow into one of Islam's most courageous warriors and later become its fourth caliph. Then came Zayd ibn Haritha, a former slave whom Muhammad had adopted as his own son. Zayd's deep devotion and early acceptance of Islam highlighted the message's power to transcend social status and challenge the rigid hierarchies of Meccan society. In a world where slaves had no voice, Islam offered him dignity, equality, and purpose. Together, these early converts laid the foundation for a movement that would reshape the spiritual and political landscape of Arabia. Their faith was not based on social convenience or political advantage. It was forged in hardship, lit by trust, and strengthened by sacrifice. Zayd's unwavering loyalty to Muhammad reflected the inclusive spirit of Islam, a faith that transcended status, race, and background. His early acceptance of the message stood as a powerful reminder that Islam was not confined to the elite, but open to all who believed. Another pillar of early support was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, a respected and wealthy merchant and Muhammad's closest friend. Abu Bakr embraced Islam shortly after Khadija and Ali. Known for his gentle demeanor and profound sincerity, he became a key figure in the spread of the new faith. His personal reputation for honesty and generosity inspired others to follow his example, including several of Mecca's most influential individuals. Among those who embraced Islam through Abu Bakr's efforts was Uthman ibn Affan, a wealthy merchant who would later become the third caliph. Uthman's generosity and commitment played a crucial role in sustaining the early Muslim community. Another prominent convert was Abd al-Rahman ibn Awf, whose sharp business sense and financial support helped fund critical early efforts of the Prophet's mission. There was also Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, renowned for his courage and spiritual devotion. He would later become one of the 10 companions promised paradise by Muhammad and played a central role in the Muslim military campaigns that followed. Perhaps one of the most inspiring early converts was Bilal ibn Rabah. An Ethiopian slave, Bilal endured unspeakable torture for declaring his belief in the oneness of God. His tormentor, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, subjected him to beatings, dragging him across the Syrian desert and placing heavy stones upon his chest. Yet, even in agony, Bilal held firm, defiantly repeating, Ahad, Ahad, one, one. His faith was unbreakable. In time, Bilal would be freed and given the honor of becoming Islam's first muezzin, the caller to prayer. His powerful voice calling the faithful to worship echoed the resilience of the early believers. These courageous individuals, diverse in background but united in faith, formed the bedrock of the Muslim Ummah. Their sacrifices, loyalty, and unwavering belief set the standard for generations to come. 2.2 Persecution and hardship. As the number of converts steadily grew, so did the hostility of the Quraysh, the dominant tribe in Mecca. The Quraysh had long derived their wealth and influence from the idol worship centered around the Kaaba. Muhammad's uncompromising monotheism posed a direct threat not only to their religious practices, but also to their political and economic power. At first, the Quraysh responded with mockery, They ridiculed Muhammad, calling him a poet, a magician, or a man possessed. But when his message continued to spread, ridicule turned into active persecution. They imposed strict social and economic boycotts, not only on Muhammad's followers, but also on his tribe, the Hashim, who protected him. Trade and marriage with Muslims and their supporters were forbidden. Supplies were cut off. The believers were forced into isolation, struggling with hunger, poverty, and illness. Those without tribal protection, especially slaves and the poor, were subjected to brutal torture. Bilal was not the only one to suffer. Sumaya bint Kayat, an elderly woman, became the first martyr in Islam. She was killed by Abu Jahl for her refusal to renounce her faith. Her husband, Yasser, died under similar torment. Their son, Ammar ibn Yasser, was forced under duress to utter words against Islam, though his heart remained faithful. Muhammad reassured him, God judges a heart, not words spoken in fear. Even the Prophet himself was not spared. He was repeatedly insulted, mocked, and physically assaulted. On one occasion, as he prostrated in prayer near the Kaaba, the Quraysh dumped the entrails of a slaughtered animal on his back. Yet through every indignity, Muhammad remained composed and steadfast. He did not retaliate. Instead, he turned ever more firmly to God and continued to spread his message with courage and compassion. One of his greatest sources of support during these years was his uncle, Abu Talib. Though he never accepted Islam, Abu Talib's protection was crucial. As a respected elder of the Quraysh, his influence shielded Muhammad from the worst excesses of their hostility. Under his watch, the Prophet was able to continue his mission, planting the seeds of a revolution that would eventually change the world. Though Abu Talib had never accepted Islam, his loyalty to his nephew Muhammad was unshakable. As a highly respected elder of the Quraysh, his public support offered the Prophet a vital shield against the growing hostility in Mecca. But this protection was not without its consequences. In 616 CE, outraged by Muhammad's persistent challenge to their authority and the foundations of their society, the Quraysh imposed a brutal and calculated boycott against the entire Banu Hashim clan. They hoped that cutting off all economic and social ties, refusing trade, business, marriage, and association, would isolate the Prophet and pressure his clan to abandon him. What followed was a period of deep suffering and deprivation. Forced to retreat to a narrow mountain pass on the outskirts of Mecca, the Banu Hashim endured 3 harrowing years of hardship. With access to food and supplies choked off, their survival hung by a thread. Children cried from hunger, their parents powerless to feed them. Leaves, dried dates, and bits of leather were consumed when nothing else remained. The cries of the weak echoed through the dry valleys, yet no relief came. And still, amid the crushing weight of hunger, social exclusion, and fear, Muhammad remained resolute. He continued to share the message of divine unity, justice, and compassion, his voice unwavering despite the silence imposed on him by Meccan society. The suffering of the boycott did not go unnoticed by all. Over time, cracks began to appear in the Quraysh's unity. A few courageous individuals, unable to bear the sight of innocent families starving for the sake of politics, worked quietly behind the scenes. Eventually, their efforts bore fruit, and in the face of mounting internal dissent, the boycott was lifted. The Banu Hashim emerged weakened in body, but unbroken in spirit. Their endurance became a testament to the power of faith and the unyielding strength of community bound together by purpose. But even greater sorrow was on the horizon. The year 619 CE would etch itself into Muhammad's heart as one of his life's most painful chapters. It began with the death of Khadija, his beloved wife, companion, and source of unwavering emotional support. For over 2 decades, she had stood by him, believing in his mission when few others did. Her passing was not just a loss of spouse. It was a loss of the person who had been his first believer, his confidant, and his constant source of encouragement through the darkest moments. As if this devastating blow were not enough, soon after, Abu Talib too passed away. With his death, Muhammad lost not only a beloved uncle, but also his political protector in the increasingly hostile climate of Mecca. The timing was merciless. Within weeks, the Prophet had been stripped of both his spiritual and worldly support. Grief weighed heavily upon him, and the Quraysh, sensing his vulnerability, escalated their cruelty. No longer held in check by tribal customs or fear of Abu Talib, they insulted him publicly, hurled threats and stones, and plotted with renewed vigor to silence him permanently. Despite these shattering losses, Muhammad's commitment to his divine mission did not falter. His sorrow did not extinguish his light. It refined it, bereft and grieving. He turned to his Lord with deeper sincerity, seeking strength not from worldly alliances, but from the certainty of his calling. His patience became legendary, his perseverance even more radiant in the face of despair. Though the year was dark, it marked a turning point, an inner transformation that would carry the prophet to the next stage of his journey with unbreakable resolve. In the aftermath of such immense personal and communal trials, one might have expected the prophet to retreat, to pause, to recover, but instead Muhammad looked outward, with eyes not dimmed by sorrow but sharpened by it. Grief had not broken him. It had purified his purpose. Though his heart still ached from the loss of Khadijah and Abu Talib, and though the courageous persecution pressed more heavily than ever, he remained steady. He did not waver. He did not yield. It was in this crucible of sorrow and solitude that Muhammad's faith took on an even more luminous clarity. When the doors of Mecca closed tighter, he sought new openings elsewhere, not out of desperation, but out of an unwavering hope that somewhere hearts were waiting to be awakened. And indeed, the seeds planted in the most difficult years of his mission would soon bear fruit in the most unexpected ways. From the distant oasis of Yathrib to the celestial realms above the seven heavens, the story of Islam was unfolding with divine orchestration. And so, the year of sorrow, marked by hunger, loss, rejection, and pain, became not the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new era. An era where resilience became legacy, where hardship gave birth to community, and where the light of revelation, far from dimming under pressure, blazed forth ever brighter. This was not merely the story of a prophet in mourning. It was a story of a soul tested by fire, emerging with a heart more open, a vision more vast, and a message destined to echo across time. That truth endures, love sustains, and faith, when held with courage, can transform even the darkest sorrow into the dawn of something eternal.